Greetings and salutations, everyone! My name is Fire Mage, and welcome back to Rimworld Ascension Take 2, Episode 60. If you enjoy this episode, please remember to like and subscribe, and as always, mod list is down in the description. And with that, let's get on to the episode. Alright, well, picking up where we left off last time, what are my plans for today? Well, today, I plan to test out the nuclear bombs. Now, I was originally planning to test them out last episode, but unfortunately, that raid did happen. If it was just the quest, I think we would have done better, but since it was a raid on top of that, didn't have time last episode to test them out, so we will be doing that today. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to actually get the uranium drawn out from the cauldron so that we can split the uranium and then get our enriched uranium to make a second nuclear bomb. Originally, I was intending to make 3 for my testing, but I think we will just do 2 so that we can get this tested sooner rather than later. And there it is. Our second nuclear warhead, and that means we can now begin planning our test. Now, for the test, my idea is I want to see, 1, if I can fire them out of a howitzer onto another world tile, and 2, I want to test what their explosive power is. And the way I'm going to do that is quite simple. The basic idea here is we send a caravan out to go and take a little look at something, perhaps this caravan stop, and then we can test out our nuclear bombs. So let's go ahead, form a vehicle caravan, and now here's the thing. I don't want to send a full squad, seems a little bit excessive, so we will instead send a highwayman with German as the driver, then the 2 war caskets, and Rivera. So that will be our little squad. Although actually we should put Rivera in the gunner position. And then the 2 war caskets, like so. Then all we need to do is load up a singular nuclear warhead, like so. And 1 mortar. Of course, I forgot to actually pick up one of the mortars, so that is a slight problem, but nothing we can't solve by simply uninstalling and then picking up. And while our nuclear caravan is getting ready, heavy carapace armor has been finished. Very good. And I think it's time for us to now move away from the Brave New Frontier and move on to something else. Now, we could go for the rocket swarm launcher, as I was talking about earlier. However, we can also go for better vehicles now, which is what we're going to do. Specifically, we are going to go for aerial vehicles, as aerial vehicles will give us the ability to finally reach out and communicate with our old allies in the Pact of Verbonlia, way up here. So hopefully, some air vehicles will do us good. Of course, we'll have to build them and probably build a runway and whatnot, but that can all wait. And our caravan has arrived at the caravan stop. And right off the bat, there are 32 people here. That is quite a few. Unfortunately for them, I happen to have an armored car with a machine gun mounted on the top and 2 war caskets. Not gonna end well for them, if I'm being honest. Let's go ahead and prepare to fight. Alright, war caskets are engaging. Highwayman, go ahead and keep driving. Oh, we shot the elephants. That was not my intention, but okay. Ah, and they are now trying to attack us. That will not end well for them. And it looks like the elephants are actually assisting us in this fight. And there we go. The tribals are retreating. A very successful attack. Alright, in that case, let's go ahead, park the highwayman. And now we get to set up the mortar. It looks like Rivera did take a little bit of damage. Unfortunate. Well, Rivera's not very good at self-tending, but they don't really have much of a choice. Alright, mortar is placed. Let's go ahead and man the mortar. Alright, mortar is loaded. Let's now test the nuclear bomb. So that radius should be the explosion itself. Actually, might not be a bad idea to draft the war caskets and get them down here so they don't accidentally kill themselves. Alright. Testing our first nuclear warhead in 3, 2, 1. Launching right there. There it goes. Alright. Not as bad as I was expecting. Very usable still. Alright. And now, let's test the one from the base. Target world tile. Oh, it does work. And let's launch it on the opposite end of the map. Let's watch it launch from here. Alright, there it goes. Traveling off of our map. Onto the world map. Alright, it's about to impact. Let's watch the map we targeted. So it should be coming from this direction, I think. Oh, yep, sure enough. Well, that confirms it. We don't even have to be on the same map to launch the nuke. That is both really cool and also really scary for what that is implying we can do. I think we're going to be having some real fun with this. Yeah, this caravan didn't really have too terribly much in the way of things to take. We mostly just wanted to attack them to test out our nuclear bombs. And now we can confirm they are very usable. They don't even do that much damage. I thought they would do way more. So that's actually a good thing in my book, as that means we can use them even more often than I was anticipating. Of course, the main holdup now is production of them, so just gonna have to wait on that. Speaking of production, though, our satellite dish has been built, and it looks like it allows us to use satellites to find more moons orbiting our planet, which is a weird thing for us to have the ability to do, because if I recall correctly, our planet already has, like, 2 moons. Yeah, it's got 2 moons orbiting in some rather weird angles, but, you know, that's not the big concern there. So we already have 2 moons. I'm unsure why we would ever need to find more, but I guess we can now with a satellite dish. If we build 2 more satellites to launch into orbit, which we won't be doing because we are once again completely out of components. Seems to be par for the course at this point. And it would appear that our constructors spent the last of our components building the lower moisture pump setup. Well, that's not the one I wanted them to prioritize, but at least we got one of our setups done. That means that this will slowly drain out all this mud, and we can build stuff here. Eventually. Unfortunately, as I said, we are out of components. meaning that we are unable to do pretty much any of our projects except maybe the upgrade uniforms. Although I'm not currently sure if the carapace armor takes components. I assume it does. It does, in fact, take components, which means that we need to get more components. Luckily, I have tuned our long-range scanner to components, so hopefully we'll be getting those soon enough. Alright, well, I think it's time for us to start investing in some more infrastructure for our farming, specifically. I think we need to build a sun lamp. Or a few sun lamps, I should say. Now, we don't need to build a hydroponic system, since I don't think that's required for the sun lamp, but we do need to start getting some food production going, seeing as we are slowly dwindling in our food supplies, but more importantly, we are dwindling in our wood supplies. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a sun lamp out here in the Mouflon pen. Granted, this does mean I need to run a power conduit up there, but that shouldn't be too hard because I can just run it right here, like so. Of course, one sun lamp producing a little bit of wood won't produce any food, which is the other thing that we need. So we will also be putting another sun lamp right here so that we can set it up as a little farming area. Not the most efficient spot, but it will do for now. Hopefully, if that works, we should be able to start getting a little bit of green back. Hopefully. In the meantime, though, our constructors have been making some work on repairing the highwayman of the damage it took during that fight, and will soon, hopefully, begin work on upgrading the bumper. Because turns out, running over tribals works really, really well. So we're going to go ahead and give it a better bumper to do that. And they've slowly been making progress on the rebar concrete armored walls up here. Slow going, but that is to be expected due to the duration of work needed on these walls. And once that section of the wall is done, I think the next one will probably be the river line, since that wall won't ever be changing. Same as this one. Both of them have borders we cannot pass. And there we go. Our first sun lamp is built. Let's go ahead and set it up as a grow zone. And I think we'll simply set it up to grow corn. Simply because we do have a large stockpile of corn. So I'm not too worried about that. But if needed, we can always switch it over to rice. And that is going to overload our grid ever so slightly, as these take almost 3,000 watts apiece. Luckily, we have batteries and they turn off at night, so they shouldn't overload our grid too terribly much. Hopefully. And there we go, the second sun lamp is built. Of course, this one hasn't been powered up yet because the power line hasn't been built, but we can go ahead and establish the grow zone itself. Now, we could grow trees in order to get our wood, or we can grow fiber corn, which does produce, I believe, it less wood, but it grows in 6 days as opposed to taking anywhere from 15 to 30 days. So we should get a more steady supply of less wood, which right now is exactly what we need. We don't need a lot, we just need enough. And now aerial vehicles is done, giving us the power to take to the skies. And I think next up, let's do combat vehicles. This will give us another plane, the Warbird, but more importantly, it will give us the Tango, which is a troop carrier, and the Bulldog, an actual tank that isn't garbage and can shoot while moving. Granted, the Roadkill does the job well enough, but I think it also gets more armor, or at least I would hope it does. So we're going to research it, build one, and see if it's worth replacing the Roadkill with. But that does mean that we can now see just what it takes to build a plane. And planes also require a runway, a pretty sizable runway, in fact. So we will need to make one of those if we desire to build a plane. Helicopters, on the other hand, are able to just simply take off and go. In fact, they can carry 3 passengers. Might not be a bad idea to build one of those to drop our war caskets off, perhaps. Have them be able to deploy closer to the enemy. Of course, their current weaponry, not the best for that, but we could upgrade them to the giant shotguns. That is an idea to contemplate. And there we go. Our 2 sun lamps are now fully planted. 1 field of fiber corn and 1 field of normal corn. Unfortunately, I don't think our grid can really handle building any more than 2. We'd need to build another reactor if we wanted to do that, which we definitely can't afford right now. So, unfortunately, that will be the extent of our farming for the foreseeable future. At least until the long night's over, which hopefully is soon. It has been a full season, so hopefully it doesn't last too much longer, but knowing my luck, probably gonna last a few years. And the northern wall upgrade is complete. Now made entirely of rebar concrete armor. And that means that next up is the southern section of the wall. Now, I do eventually plan to extend it all the way down here, and probably run it up along this, maximize our space, but that is a problem for later, so we will instead simply start reinforcing right about here, since this is where a few of the weaker wall sections are. And then we simply run it all the way up, like so. And then we do a little something like this, so that we can make sure that is right along the water line. And we'll start by just doing this little section here, and that should be enough for now. And while they're working on that, since we don't have any components right now, and we're running low on general resources, the next project is going to be something a little smaller. I want to make the armory just a little bigger. My reasoning for this is simple. We are getting more people, therefore we need more uniforms. And the simple solution to that, make the armory bigger. A simple enough upgrade. Give us a little more space for armor racks, and speaking of combat, combat vehicles has been finished. And that is lovely. Of course, again, still no components, so we can't do anything with that. Now, we could research complex vehicles, however, if I'm being honest, I don't really want any of these. They all kinda suck. They don't fill any niche, so I'm not gonna bother researching them. Instead, it's time for us to research factory basics. That's right, we are getting into factory production. Simply because I need a lot more chem fuel, and I am sick of having them do it manually. So we're going to research this, and then we are going to research munition armaments factory, which will give us the ability to make chem fuel in vast amounts, which will be very good because right now we have a grand total of 77 chem fuel stored in the network. That's not really enough to do much of anything. But with that research picked and the new armory design set up, I think I'm going to leave this episode off here. We did make some pretty big progress today with the testing of the nuclear bombs. We now know, while powerful, they're not too powerful, so we can use them in a large amount as soon as we get more resources to make them, of course. We also have finally gotten around to building 2 sun lamps so that we can get a little bit of plants growing again. And we are now working on the armory upgrade that I just set up. So, that should get done next episode, if all goes according to plan. The long night is still hitting us pretty hard though, so hopefully that'll end one of these episodes. I'd really rather not have to deal with this for multiple years on end. And at this point, becoming raiders is looking more and more enticing. But with all that said and done, though, I will see you all in the next episode.